Hey guys, today's episode of Bar Talk, we are going to be at the Pit Rib House, where you have one of the most famous, most pleasurable ribs and chicken you can find in the city of Hickory Hills, or actually anywhere around, to be honest. Join us today as the group gets together. We're going to discuss some real estate topics that I think will catch your interest, and we're hoping you like what you see. Well, guys, now that we're all full bellies, some good ribs here, we're going to start talking about 2024 changes and expectations. I'm going to present the team. We got Dan Rogers, again, Gary T. Rig, one of the best in the city, and of course, Joseph Murray. Joe. And then, of course, Eric Corral, RE/MAX Partners, top agents and RE/MAX Partners. We want to go ahead and go one by one. Just tell us what you guys think about 2024. What do you see is changing, and what are you expecting to see going forward?
All right. Well, I'm sure we may differ a little here, but
Absolutely.
From the lending side of things, we're already seeing changes that are making it a bit easier, right? Fannie Mae announcing they're allowing 2 to 4 units with just as little as 5% down for an owner-occupied property. That's huge. I mean, that just brings a lot more buyers that want to get into investment-type properties into the market. We've already seen just this week a lot of old pre-approvals that we did a year or 2 years ago. Didn't find a home. I want it updated. Can you get it updated? So we're seeing that activity already, which is a good sign. I mean, I think that when you really look at the last 2 years, so many buyers started, never found something, backed out of the market. They're going to be back. And I know that there are sellers out there when rates continue to tick down, being in the mid-6s now primarily. There's going to be more sellers now that said, well, I didn't want to sell when they were 7, 8. I can deal with the 6s. Time for me to list because I got to get out of here, move, retire, upsize, downsize, whatever they're going to do. So I honestly think by March, we should have a lot of new inventory, and I know we're going to have a lot of buyers ready to buy it. Yeah. Values are going to really get pushed again because of competition.
Are you seeing a lot of the 5% conventional multi-unit sales going through?
Not yet, as far as people winning the bids. That it's such a limited supply, right?
Right.
And we have a customer now together that's looking for them. It's kind of a needle in a haystack property, depending on where they want to live.
Right, and depending on the property.
Exactly, and what are the rents, and are they going to be good enough to make it a true good investment for them, trying to offset what their monthly housing expense is going to be.
I'm hearing that you could actually do a single family home too, as long as rental income could come out of it, if it has the characteristics of a 2-unit?
If it actually has a unit that's a rentable unit, Fannie Mae does allow border income per se, but that gets a little tricky on what border income is, right? To be renting out a unit within the house. So
okay,
yeah, I definitely think we're going to have a year that.
Do you see a positive year coming up?
Really good positive year. Yes.
Increase of how much percent you think? Just to round it out. I know we dropped about 25-30%.
I am on the page with 25% for sure. I think that's what we're going to pick up.
Yeah.
On the legal aspects of this, Joe, what do you see?
I would say more from the consumer's aspect and then kind of what's happening in the industry. So I expect, because of the class action lawsuits, I think there's going to be some settlements that are going to be coming out down the pike. I think that's going to really change a lot of how the consumers, but especially how the real estate industry is done. I think a lot of realtors are going to adjust, right? I think I was mentioning to you, we've already seen, just in listing agreements, we've already seen a couple of offices that are saying 0% to the buyer's agent. So they're already assuming, hey, the landscape has changed, so they're adjusting with it already. They're not waiting for any kind of outcome for appeals or anything. They're just assuming that's where the industry is going. So I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see realtors really, we talked about this in our last podcast. We were just talking about how the narrative has to change. Buyer's agents really need to go ahead and explain to consumers why they're so valuable, right? Why they are paying them what they're paying them. As opposed to before, it was kind of a, you don't have to pay me and I'm providing this. You have to change your whole presentation, that buyer's presentation.
Right.
And I think I've started seeing some adjustments already from agents and talking to them because they understand that the landscape is going to change, which is great because to piggyback off what Dan said, I agree that because the interest rates are coming down, that 6.5% seems to be the number where a lot of the economists feel like once we hit that number, that interest rate, it really is just going to change psychologically the way people approach the real estate market. So, and now on the practical side of it, the consumer standpoint, I was mentioning to Eric, we've had a good number of earnest money deposits. So we hold earnest money in a lot of transactions. A lot of attorneys don't do it, but we do. And so that for me is also an indicator. And we've had earnest money checks coming in for listings. The buyers are out there, just like you mentioned. I agree, absolutely. The buyers are out there. They were just waiting for that shift in the interest rate to kind of justify, like at 7.5%, 8%, maybe, but at 6.5%, well, I've seen that before in my lifetime. Or maybe that was my first mortgage at 6.5%, and so they're willing to take that plunge. But then the sellers also are the same like mind, where they realize, listen, this market's not going to go back to 3%. It's not going to go to 2.5%. So for me to continue waiting that way, the consumer's understanding, I need to adjust to it. I've just got to go with that 6.5. If we get as close to that, it's a good time for me to go, right? So I think you're seeing that change not only because of the interest rates are changing the mindset, but I think just the realtors, the real estate professionals, loan officers, realtors, attorneys, everybody's just seeing, hey, we've got to shift with this. Whether it's an outcome from the lawsuits, whether it's just the way the industry is changing. But I agree with Dan that I think 25%, I can see that jump in terms of the industry this year. I can absolutely see that because we really were at the bottom, right? So you have nowhere to go but up.
There's a huge adjustment from 2022
absolutely.
to 2023.
Yeah.
But you're usually at the closing tables. I mean,
Right.
you're there. What trends have you seen in regards to these buyer credits or these buyer agents getting paid by buyers? Are you seeing more and more of them?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've even towards the end of the year, we saw people were adjusting where I already had agents essentially just telling their clients, listen, I'm not going to get paid by them. You're going to pay. It's going to come from your side. So people were already experimenting with that. I saw a number of agents that were doing it and clients that understood that.
So we know it's here.
Right,
It's here.
we know it's here.
happening.
And I think I talked about this last time. There are a lot of areas, there are some states where this was already the norm 4 or 5 years ago, where they were
that's
not
right.
being, the buyer's agent's commission wasn't being paid by the seller. And in those markets, we saw the adjustments. Buyers were willing to go ahead and pay, but again, it's always about changing that narrative of justifying why it is that you're a value, right? And if you do that well, people are going to pay. Everybody in the world knows nothing is free in this life. I mean, you just don't get anything
Right,
for free,
right.
right? And so people understand I've got to pay for services. I think for too long in the industry, we just let that be part of the narrative, which was kind of a mistake,
Part of the norm.
right?
Yeah.
And it became a norm, but now we have to deviate. Now we've got to move and we got to shift that.
I know Eric and we've had those conversations. We said this change was coming.
I mean, I think that's something that I personally need to adjust for because, I'll be honest, I don't think it's one of my big priorities or focuses right now with buyers when we do buyer consultations. I've been more focused on, trying to explain, the different type of loans, the payment breakdown, letting them understand, what a max payment is, what they qualify for. So I think that's something that I need to implement is, talking about commissions, how there's a possibility that, you as a buyer may have to cover some of the commissions that we're used to getting paid.
Right.
But I think one of the things that I want to talk about that I think we're going to see this coming year is kind of to your point, you're receiving a little bit more earnest money, so you're obviously seeing contracts come in. I feel like late fall moving into the winter, I did a good amount of listing appointments, but they were all sellers that were looking to sell. They were depending on the proceeds to eventually buy something. And I feel like they were still hesitant to make the moves strictly because of interest rates. So I think that's going to be some of the inventory that we're going to see into 2024, where we're going to see some of the sellers that are going to be a little bit more encouraged to sell and either downsize, get something bigger, because it's kind of hard to convince a seller to sell their house when they're locked into like a 2.75 interest rate fixed for possibly 15 years.
Correct.
I've had a couple clients that refinance. They took advantage of a 15-year fixed loan. So, I mean, it's impossible to really beat that type of rate. So, I've encouraged some of them to potentially rent their homes, you know, keep it as an investment. So I think there's going to be more homes also for rent, more options for rent.
Okay.
I personally have seen some of my landlords really take advantage that now that prices are going up, property taxes are going up, they're really pushing the rents up as well on some of the rental properties. I mean, I have a perfect example. I got a property, a 4-unit that we sold in Cicero. I got a landlord. We're trying to lease out a 2-bedroom for $1,850 a month. I mean, that's kind of unheard of.
It's a mortgage.
But it's
It's a mortgage, yeah. But that's what he's
But
pushing
it's
for,
common.
and that's the activity we are getting activity. But I feel a lot of landlords are pushing the rents up, and I'm a little worried for 2024. I think it's going to be a busy year, but I have a feeling it's going to be like 2021, where you know we had bidding wars, highest and best, appraisal waivers again,
Right.
home inspection waivers. Which is, in my opinion, I don't think it's a healthy market.
You know, 2024 is a
but,
presidential year. What do you guys think of that?
Well, you know, I think there's always the conspiracy theorists, right? Where people are like, oh, the Fed's going to change this, they're going to do this, the president's going to order the Fed. The president can't order the Fed to do anything.
Exactly.
Right? But people always have that feeling there's a conspiracy theorist that, oh, they're going to do it because, you know, the
So you don't
current
think,
president's going to
do
do
you
this.
think Joe Biden could influence the rate to
No.
kind of drop at
You can't.
6%
No.
or
Can't do
talk to the Federal Reserve? and
Can't
say
do
the
it.
same?
That's
You know, one of the
that's
biggest
the whole checks and balances.
Right. One of the
Right.
biggest misnomers is,
Yep.
you know, who are the Fed chairs?
Right.
They're attorneys. They're not investment guys.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
bankers. They're attorneys.
So historically, during presidential years, the market tends to, according to what, except for 2020, right?
Right,
Because the rates were at
right,
3%,
right.
the market boomed, right? But besides that,
But-
the
but
market
it's-
just kind of, because everybody doesn't know what's going to happen,
It's that-
everybody kind of holds back.
So I mean, the Fed can on their own low interest rates because right now it's an adjustment to all of the inflation concerns that they have, right? So that's why they had to raise it to try to go ahead and kind of corral the economy. And now, so the thought is, and the belief I think most economists say is, yeah, there's going to be some rate drops going along, but that doesn't coincide with the president calling Jerome Powell and saying, hey, you need to drop the rates. That's not what happened.
Well, I mean, for regular John Doe, right, that doesn't know politics, how
Right,
that works
right,
out.
right.
If the rates went down to 6% right before the election, it's, oh wow, the rates went down. Look who did it.
coincidence.
Now, before, when Trump was in the House, and he said,
It's-
"Oh, look at the
it's-
gas at $2.85
It's-
again." I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
but
he
it's,
did it.
it's
Yeah, he
coincidence.
didn't
It's
do
not.
nothing.
They didn't
Yeah.
control
I
it.
think
yeah.
at the end of the day, the
It's
clients that's really going to be more hesitant to purchase is, you know, your savvy investors that are dealing with, you know, high volume purchases. Maybe they're going to be the ones that are going to wait for to see what policies
Sure,
are implemented
sure.
next year.
Right.
But I
Right.
think, you know, your everyday home buyer is trying to buy something that's, you know, as a primary residence.
Right.
I don't really
Listen.
think they're going to wait for the new president to come on board.
You're
to-
right. Their factors are job,
Yeah,
kids' school,
unemployment.
employment issues. That's what matters, right?
I agree with you.
So when
It's-
people buy during December, the month of December, I mean, it's when they have to buy, right?
Yeah.
If they have kids, they don't want to move their kids, but if they have to buy because of a job relocation, what have you, that's what happens. So I mean, you're right. I think Eric.
I heard
you're
that in a
right about
podcast that
Yeah.
it's the corporations that are buying in, you know, these mass quantity
Sure.
transactions.
Bulk
I think
sales,
they're
yeah.
the ones that are really.
But don't they influence
a little
the
bit
money?
more hesitant?
Wouldn't that
to-
influence the rates? I mean, I'm thinking big corporations decide, hey, we're gonna. Well, we don't know. What about if it's going to be election comes up? It's going to be Biden. It's going to be Trump again. I mean, I'm in a big corporation. So well, let's hold up and find out. It's a big difference between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Yeah, because of
But
tax
they
policy
don't affect
and
the
spending,
rates.
which
Those corporations don't affect.
But
the
holding
rates.
back from investing is that an
That's
issue?
still not going to do
No?
it.
So
Nope.
I got a question for you guys. I heard they had already announced that there was going to be 6 reductions to rates, and then that's been
That's been the
reduced to 3.
speculation to 2 now.
So do we
Yes.
know what it's
so
actually going to be?
no, because
don't.
there's a chart
Right.
that shows all the major Goldman Sachs and Chase and
Right,
all the major investment houses in our country, and what their predictions are for the amount of
Rate cuts,
rate
yeah.
cuts. It ranges from a half
Yep.
to 2 on the top end. Nobody knows there.
I mean,
it's
it's-
crazy that it's
The Wall
nobody-
Street Journal had, I think they had 100 economists from last year, and how many of them predicted that we were going to be in a recession? Let's say it was like 95 out of
Yeah.
100.
Whoa.
So they were all wrong.
They were all
So, I
wrong.
mean, again, it's almost like the weatherman.
Yeah.
I think the chief economist of either Redfin or Zillow came on a podcast. they predicted the rates will be like in the low 60s.
I agree with that.
Right. Which I can absolutely see that
But,
because
but how does that? See, I would say I would agree. But how would that help us? I mean, if we're still dealing with inflation, the prices of the houses are still high, right? So as soon as you drop that rate, it's not going to lower the prices; it's going to increase the price.
Correct.
How is that going to help with inflation? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, the inflation of housing.
Well, just inflation issues that we have
No,
overall.
but I mean, Dan's right. There's the inflation in terms of you're talking about housing prices or inflation as to
No, no, I'm talking about-
consumers being able to buy eggs and milk and all of that stuff. That's different. That's different.
Well, I'm not saying real estate inflation also takes a major effect on the rest of the economy in regards to inflation of just the regular item. I mean, real estate controls the economic markets. That's my theory on
It's
it.
20% of it. It's
Right.
20%.
Okay,
but,
so-
but 80% is not real
If you
estate.
looked at this, if we get down to a rate level where more of those people that are holding on to their homes because yes, they wanted to move, but rates were too high, right? And they don't want to give up that 2 3/4. When we get to a level where more of them are willing to sell, more inventory means we're going to have more for buyers to choose from, which isn't going
So-
to cause that spike.
To your question, 2023, when was the peak of interest rates? Was it like September?
November.
November.
8%.
8%.
8%.
So
yeah.
with that, did you notice your listings? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I know you're
Yeah.
heavy on listings.
That they
did you
stagnate.
notice price reductions, or do you? Think,
Well, right now
do you
we
think
have a
that
s-
interest rates haven't done enough to lower prices.
I
That's a
think
good point.
I've always said that the guys on the floor are always the first to see changes coming, right? So in December, to November, we saw that stagnated market, right? Where I had new flipped properties,
Yeah.
rehab, which within hours they were gone. And I'm sitting on
So they're
90 days
sitting
and
in,
can't
yeah.
sell.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right,
Yeah.
but we saw it. But then about 60 days after it happens, and oh, you know what? The market's stagnant. Well, we already knew that because we
Yeah.
see we're on the floor.
right.
So my thing is, I got a rehabber. We got a couple listings in the Austin neighborhood. I mean, we're used to setting the bar every 3 months. It seemed like one rehabber set the bar, then
Yep.
the
Sure,
next
another one
rehabber set
comes
the
in
bar.
there.
Yeah.
So here we are listing in late November. You know, I think the highest rehab we saw was like at 370. We're listing for 420. Our listing was just sitting there.
Yeah.
And it all depends too on what part
So
of the
it's like
city.
setting the
Right,
bar.
right.
It is. It's no longer.
But
the trend
that,
happening.
yeah, that also comes back to your point about in terms of pricing, housing inflation, right? Because there is going to be a limit. There has to be, right? Where consumers just can't afford to buy anymore. I mean, we're probably at that. We've been at that. That's why so many people are not able to afford homes. You know, some parts of the market, maybe some parts of the city, we might see some price decreases. You might see some of that.
That's what I say. You can't blanket the whole entire buyer market
Right,
with what's
right.
happening in Naperville to what's happening in
Absolutely.
Auburn
Very
Gresham.
true.
Right.
So it's going to be a whole
Right.
different scenario. But I think in order to attack inflation, the prices have to come down, the inventory levels have to come up, demand has to stabilize. So demand and the inventory has to meet equilibrium.
Right.
And we're so far from
Well,
there. You know?
I think
Yeah.
that's what to me is a
Surplus
little
in
scary
demand.
for what 2024 is going to bring
Supply and
because I think it's agreed that we've hit the worst of the rates. Right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, we're not
And
going. We're not
some
going
markets,
backwards.
Like your Plainfields, your West suburbs. I mean, they slowed down a little bit, but they didn't really seem to be impacted as much as maybe they should have been impacted. So that's what worries me. Is like
I know,
now we're
yeah.
going back to those markets. Rates are coming.
I
down.
think it's too
It's
soon.
like the
you know?
floodgates are just going to open up buyers.
I mean,
and-
I,
Well, that's
think
my
Eric,
fear.
I think Eric, you've got a point there. I think, you know what, the reality is, it is going to feel like there's a floodgate compared to last year.
Right.
If there's any kind of an uptick, it's going to feel like, oh my gosh, we're all this crazy market. Because it made me laugh. Just we're talking about at the closing table. It made me laugh when I would see some closers. They would be handling like 2 real estate closings at one time. They were like, I'm so swamped, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, a couple of years ago you were doing almost 3 of them at one time. But right now, now that you went to 1 and now you had to handle 2, and now you're thinking,
yeah.
but it's just going to feel like it's that much more hectic
Yeah.
compared to last year, right? When you get to the bottom, everything feels like, oh, it's so
the
busy.
pie was pretty small
Yeah,
last year.
It was. It
It's good
was.
for the big teams that can handle a lot of
Right,
a lot of
right,
transactions.
volume,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we see that a lot. You see agents that are like, oh my God, I'm so busy, and then you check their closed transactions, they're like 12 closing the whole year.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? So they don't know how to, figure out where to focus their money. And I think that's one of the priorities is what I'm focusing on 2024 when it comes to changes. prioritize your time correctly. You know,
Well, it really is. I think one of the big points that we brought out here is really just the supply, right? We need that. The
Supply.
inventory is the biggest issue.
Yes.
And if I was a realtor, I would really be focusing on trying to get some of those folks off the fence.
Yeah.
Right? I would really be
Now.
looking at the folks that have had their houses paid off. They're above the age of 65 or something like that. No kids at home. I would really spend my money on trying to focus and market to those folks, right? Because that's one group that really you have to convince to sell their homes. Because
Right,
there have
right.
been so many articles about folks who are just staying in their homes. The baby
Correct.
boomers are staying in their homes much longer. So there needs to be a concerted effort, whether it's the real estate associations or individual teams, go after those people and try to
Right.
market them. I mean, send out in a week from now when it's snowing and people are shoveling, send them a thing saying, "Hey, don't you want to live in Florida? Wouldn't you rather be in Phoenix?" Or or like
you want me to shovel your
Yeah.
snow for listing?
I mean, honestly,
There you go, the
that's-
snowbirds out of Cook County.
That's what I would do. Or send them something saying like, "Hey, are you missing your grandkids? Whatever, isn't it time to get closer to them?"
That's a good idea.
But those are marketing
good.
events. See, I should be a realtor.
Hey, hey, we're,
You're wrong, you're the
It's
wrong-
funny you said that.
we're pushing the
Yeah.
heck on the
There you go.
reverse mortgage
Yeah.
because you can buy a home as a senior using a reverse mortgage,
Yeah.
not use all the proceeds, sit on 200 grand, take a $200,000 reverse,
Yeah.
make no payments on it, and you've got that extra money to play with.
Right. Right.
So
Well, it's funny you guys mentioned that. We're just talking about this new changes that are coming up in 2024. Like, how many agents are going to start using that? Hey, I'll list your home for 3%, 2.5%, right?
Brokerages.
Not give it up. Well, I just told the team, hey guys, that's not going to be for everybody. All right, there's going to be a certain group of people, like for example, rehabbers and flippers. They're in a time crunch. If they want to get 4 transactions done in 1 year, they don't have the time to
Yeah.
play around and list the
Yeah.
property for 3% and fight. Because if you want to capture the entire market, you got to start giving out to these agents. Because you know what's going to happen in the beginning? The agents don't know how to sell it. They're going to say, oh, this guy's paying out 0. You don't want to look at that one. Let's look at this one, the steering. They're going to start steering them away from that property because they don't know how to
a
tackle that
reality.
situation.
That's
yet.
a reality.
We'll look at it and say, look, they're not paying it.
That's a reality.
But you know what? I'm going to try to get it. If you're interested. If not, you're going to have to pay me. That's fine. Let's make it happen.
Right.
So before you go into the property, hey, is your seller willing to pay us and we give him full price? Yeah, sure. If you're an agent, you should know that by now.
Right, right.
But some of these guys are not going to be able to do that.
No, it's
You know,
gonna
so
be an adjustment.
there's usually going to be for some group of people that are like sitting with limited equity, right? Like they bought. Look, I bought in 2021. My neighbor is a racist, and I can't stand him. I got to move out, but I don't have enough money to cover this.
That's a little bit extreme, but yeah.
I think like these podcast settings, you should make it informative for your future clients
Yeah.
and letting
Yeah.
them know what their options are
Right.
going to be.
That's
Obviously,
right.
there's going to be people in the industry that are going to hear this podcast and they know about it, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's something that you can utilize your platforms to let them know, hey, this is the new norm.
Right,
Right.
right.
Maybe even for your future buyers, like, hey, this is what the transaction fee is going to
By
be.
buyer presentations.
Listing-
I mean, when you go
Yeah.
on a listing presentation now, your presentation's different because
Yeah.
you have to give them the choices of how do you want to list your home.
Right.
Do you want to pay out or
Right.
not?
Do you
Right.
not?
Here's
Right.
the pros and
Right.
the cons.
That's right.
Ultimately, Mr. Seller, you get to make the decision.
And so obviously we're focusing here about what's 2024, what are some of the changes, some of the expectations, right? One of the things that I would say that I think is good for everybody here is a reality of this market is we're losing real estate agents. We're losing loan officers. That's a cleansing of the market.
So,
Yeah,
Which is
there's
a-
no-
I mean,
we're not losing it. We're
so-
cleaning it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's good from the standpoint of the real focused professionals now. There's a little bit less competition where those people might have taken 1 or 2 deals a year from you that you should have had.
Right,
Now,
right.
because the market is cleansing itself. So, in terms of like expectations for this year, that's one of the expectations.
So,
that's out
like
there.
Dan, you're on the lending side. I got a
Mhm.
question for you.
Sure.
How are you going to tackle a situation where, let's just say, you have a buyer, limited reserves.
Mhm.
They're barely coming up with the down payment, covering closing costs.
Right.
And here you got a realtor like me and Pablo.
Yep.
We're trying to tack on a 2.5% commission. Like, how is that? Gonna
So we
handle
talked
your
talked
hands?
about it today in my meeting today. I said that when I do a pre-approval now, and this started a month ago, we're having that conversation with that customer.
Buyers.
All right, so typical closing costs outside the city are $6,000. You're looking at $200,000 properties. You could be paying 2.5%.
Yeah.
Another $5,000 of monies to a realtor, your real estate agent, to represent you, because not all sell. So we need to be prepared for that.
Right.
So that's how we're handling. We're trying to educate them, Eric.
I think for you, Pablo, I think that's good. You have your team tight knit where
Right.
he's communicating it, and then now your team's just
Right,
we have our
Same
meetings.
It's like now the buyer has the
Same
same
message,
message.
yeah.
It's a real conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is, and we don't want them to go to find the perfect home and realize they're paying zero, and no one ever told them.
Right.
You know, this. I listened to Pablo to present a buyer's representation for those buyers in person,
Right,
and
that's Saturday.
you did a great job explaining how it all worked, and that's what they need to hear. And we
Yeah,
got
reality.
It's easier than what most agents think it is. If you go in there, you're like, well, listen, I might charge you, but don't worry, I charge you 1.5 instead of the 2.5. Then once you start showing doubt, like, well, wait a minute, I could get away with this cost.
Yeah.
No, it's what we charge, what it is. It is part of my service. I did mention about, we posted something up about all the stuff we do as buyer agents. Well, buyer agents too, right? I haven't been a buyer agent for a long time, but I'm still present with the family and friends, closest friends. And it's just, it's going to be part of the presentation. Hey, look, here's what we do. This is why we try. Now, we may not close. We talked about in the last episode, right? We don't close. We don't get paid. Hey, you know what? It is what it is. That's part of the
Sure,
job.
yeah.
It's
Sure.
part of the risk we take to get
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But in most cases, if we are doing our job right, if we are helping our clients, if we are getting the best negotiable contract they could get, we're going to get paid.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, there's no doubt about
I
it.
firmly believe that. I really think, like I said, it's a narrative shift, right? But I think if you do it well, people understand you have to pay for services. I mean, we were talking about last time, even in the Hispanic community, just a lot of the Spanish phrases and just, the way people say, like, if you buy something cheap, it'll cost you more in the end.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll say nothing
Barato
for
sale
free.
caro.
Right, right. And so, but people understand that if you're providing value, I'm going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality. But again, it's now, I think the realtors really just have to be more comfortable in doing that presentation like you did and you'll do, and and it's just the reality of life. That's the way it's going to work.
It's going to be an interesting year to see
Yeah.
what those things. I mean, last episode we went deep into NAR. This episode we want to talk more about what we're going to be expecting, what changes we see coming. I mean, it's all going to relate to the same topic, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
we got to get better with our buyers. We got to educate our clients, and then of course some lending aspects of it is. We're going to see you guys doing your part.
Yeah, for sure.
Joe, you're seeing it more on the closing table. I think, I'm hoping you're seeing more of that change, and then you can relate that to us. Say,
Sure,
hey, how
absolutely.
this is going on? Get with it. Start educating the rest, and
Yeah.
let them know what's happening. Eric, I know you have plans some team thing going.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great. I think our next episode will be on team building.
Team building, all right?
And with the team things.
I think if there's one thing I would want my clients to know for 2024 is rates are going to come down. There is going to maybe be more inventory, but there's going to be a lot more demand as well. So I would say if you're looking to buy, start now. Don't wait till after tax season. Don't wait for the first decrease in rates, because it's kind of like monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to jump on board,
Yeah.
and you're going to regret not buying. In 2023.
And it's not a sales pitch; it's just a reality.
And it's funny. We're pretty heavy on social media. We're making an ad what your payment would be in 2023 with a 7 point, let's just say a 7.5
Yeah.
interest
Yep.
rate.
Right.
What your payment would be now with like a 6.25.
Right.
Sure.
And what your potential payment would be with a 5.9, for example.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, there's a decrease in maybe $200, right? But if you're gonna wait 6 months to save $200 on your monthly payment, you run the risk of getting in a bidding war and
Yeah.
then overbidding for a house by another 20, 30,000.
Exactly.
So you're back to your same
payment.
And it's like,
Exactly.
all right, do you wait, risk it, or?
Yeah.
But it's just everybody wants to feel comfortable, and they don't pull the trigger until they see everybody do it.
And that's the message.
problem.
That's the message.
That's
Eric hit
human
it- hit the-
nature, man.
he hit the-
That's
he hit the-
that's
Nobody wants to be the
Right.
first one
But
to
you-
take the first step.
But he
Uh,
hit the nail on the head, because you're right. I mean, it's not a sales pitch; it is the reality. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, if you wait 6 months, that same house could be $20,000 more. You really do it right now, and you'll be good.
Well,
And
I
that's
think we do a wrap in December. We do the same group, and we look at where we
Look
were
at where
at.
we're
Oh
at.
yeah,
Yeah.
But that's what's scary for me. When you say, "Oh, the interest rates are going to go down to 6%," it's not too soon. Because I mean, the prices haven't even come down yet. We haven't stagnated market.
Yeah.
They haven't come down or gone up.
Yeah, they're not coming down.
I do
that
analysis like, wait, well, some areas they come down maybe 10 grand because it's inner city.
Yeah.
Whatever. There's a reasoning for it, right? But everything else just stagnates, it's just sitting there. As soon as that rate hits 6, you can start seeing this. Demand goes up. And now everybody's multiple offer scenarios come back.
Yeah.
And it's just like, just hold on, wait for that 6th of December.
So you wait, we don't want rates to come down.
I don't want rates to come down. We're not ready for it yet. I mean, we're still dealing with
We want a
inflation.
couple more realtors to fall off the business.
Yeah.
Falling off the tree, and
I just
there's
don't think
less leaves on the tree.
we've brought the inflation levels to where it need to be in order for us
Yeah,
to start growing.
the market did get a little ahead of itself. We went from 8 to almost 6.5
Pretty
in
quickly.
a month.
Yeah.
That's the market is anticipating all this, but it is ahead of
It's
itself.
like the Feds are trying to call it a soft landing.
Right.
Yeah,
That's been the
they're
argument.
saying
the
that
whole
they're
time.
about to land it.
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
That's right.
I think they are. I mean,
Yeah, I
they
think-
Before I'd be like,
you
you know
could be
what,
right.
there's
All the
people
indicators are
specialize
there.
in that. That's their
All the
job, and I
indicators
don't
are
need to
there.
worry about it. But we see that happening. These guys don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
We're the ones on the floor. We'll see it. I don't believe that there are people that specialize in that know what they're doing because they keep making those same mistakes. you know?
Well, I mean, it's going back to the first point when we started the podcast, right? Talking about, does the Fed control the market? Can the president call the Fed and say, change this? They can't.
Oh, yeah.
And because the Fed can't just absolutely control everything, and neither can the president, right? Because otherwise, every president would move every lever to make sure that they had a great
And there's a
market.
multitude
right?
of
And they
Fed
can't do it.
chairs.
Yeah,
It's not just
absolutely.
one person.
It's not one.
They have
right.
to agree.
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
I see that. I see your point. I mean, we got an interesting. I think again. Well, my personal opinion is, we're going to see a better year. 2024 has
Sure.
got to be better.
Absolutely.
I think it more like 15%. 20, and I'll be happy with 15 because that's. It's more. It's not as aggressive as the 25%.
I'm thinking.
Because
Being
inflation
positive.
always happens when you have these huge changes in your
spikes,
market.
yeah.
So I might get 10, 15,
You want
and
a
then
more
kind of gradually
gradual
react. I want gradual movements. I don't like those spikes.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's always a sign of trouble.
And but we've been really fortunate because here in the Chicagoland area, the reality is, so like if you look at the Case-Shiller Index, right, and they follow the 20 biggest cities, our growth, our
It's been
appreciation
much
has been
slower than almost
very
every other
gradual.
major metropolitan
Whereas if you
area.
look, like I talked to my friends in San
Yeah.
Diego and LA, and they've
Yeah,
had this
even
and then
like
this, and they went back
Texas,
to
Florida,
Miami, right? We've never had that
We've
issue,
not
so
had
we're
that.
really fortunate. Even though it feels like we have, but we haven't really.
So the thing is, like, believe it or not, other states see Midwest as still like fairly low.
Oh,
I know.
absolutely.
The average-
So like that's
The average
why
sale.
they
Agreed.
still like we're gradually growing in price, like
Yeah.
our listings. But like California, New York, and even other states, they still see the Midwest as affordable housing.
Sure, yeah.
So
Miami,
it's
yeah.
like that's why we're not seeing
Well,
the
I
price
just
drop.
went today. I
like-
think the average sale price is 400 and I think what's it 409?
National?
It went from
National?
418 national.
So
Yeah,
national.
I heard a podcast that like cities like Austin,
Yep.
they've experienced like a major
Oh,
decrease in
jeez.
price.
I feel like moving.
Because
It's
they
hot there.
went
It's very
there,
hot there.
inflation went up so quickly
Crazy, yeah.
that they're the ones feeling it now
Right.
with the rate with the
True.
when the rates
Places
increase.
like Seattle, they were, up here, and then they took a big nosedive. But places, there are some cities that they just roller coaster kind of up
You know,
and down.
when
up
you
and down.
hear about national changes like San Diego and New York, I'm happy we're in Chicago. I mean, we
Sure,
see
yeah.
some fluctuation here, but we're complaining about this. There's other parts of the
Oh,
country
yeah.
that just. I mean, San Diego, I think the average sale price is like 500,000 or
No.
something.
Correct.
Guess about 1.1 million, man.
Yeah.
1.1
It's
million.
really
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I love my
Yeah.
buddy David Fletters over there. He's killing it.
No, it's-
we
yeah.
we have to sell 100 units for us to get what they could do in 20 units.
Don't talk to us about units. It's all about units here.
I'm definitely just thinking about moving from Chicago. Just
No.
But it's been great though. We've managed to keep moving forward. Eric, you've done great last year. You actually moved up from 2022 to 2023, right?
No, well, my numbers actually went down from 2022 to 2023. We did have about a 10% decrease in numbers.
Oh, we did actually. Well,
10% 's not bad
that's
at all.
Not bad at all.
Not
That's
at
pretty good.
Really
considering,
good.
what
Means
we
you
see.
worked really hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I saw maybe like a 30%, but we expected it. I think we went in the market knowing. I think I told the team that we're going to see an 8% before the year's over, and that's exactly what we saw. Because I like to stay on top of these trends, and we put our own 2 cents. 20 years in the business, you kind of see things happening as they come along. We're in the field, we're seeing it as it's moving. So I saw it coming, and we kind of prepared for it. So now we want to prepare to be ready for 2024. a new
Come
buyer
on.
market, the new presentations, the new sales points, the new loan options that are going to
Yeah.
be available.
Absolutely.
Legal, you're the one at the end of the line watching all this stuff for you to say, Pablo, listen, we need to talk. We got a trend happening. You need to get on
Yeah.
board on this. Eric and I, we're partners in crime over here looking at different stuff. Hey, what do you got going? What do you see? We talk. Okay, listen, here's what I suggest you should do in a situation like this. I love it. I love the teamwork, and I look forward to the episodes to come.
Yeah.
I think we got more great topics that we need to talk about as we move
Sure.
forward. And I'd like
Sure.
to, anyone wants to add anything before we end this podcast?
Well, I agree with what you said earlier. It'd be great to compare in December, right?
There you go.
Let's look at what we said today.
All
Watch
right.
it again in December.
We'll mark
bring
the- we'll
everybody
mark the
back and
calendar,
see
right?
what-
Today
Honestly,
is what?
guys, I
Reconvening.
think by April, what we talked about in this
Well,
table,
100%.
a lot of our predictions are going to be.
Well, we're definitely going to be
All right,
coming
yeah.
back. I hope you guys, I can bring you guys back as
Absolutely.
guests, and we
Yeah.
can start talking about. We'll go back into these subjects as we see the trends happening. We'll enjoy a couple more.
Hey, you invite us to eat again. We're coming back.
great
no
place,
shit.
great place.
That food was amazing.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Thank you to
we're
the
gonna
pit,
keep doing
right?
it.
Yeah.
Thank you to the pit.
Yeah,
Thank you to the
absolutely.
pit.
Pitt's
Thank you
great
to
host.
Alex to the pit for making this happen for us. Look forward to the next Bar Talk episode. We'll be going into other subjects that are very important in today's market. Well, we'll say salute to that,
Yeah.
right?
Salute,
Salute,
gentlemen.
We'll see you guys on the next one.
All right,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.